I've always been a simple man with simple needs. At 68, I can look back on my life with a certain pride, not the boastful kind, but the quiet satisfaction of knowing I've lived honestly. For 43 years, I worked at the same construction company in Portland, Oregon, starting as a laborer and eventually becoming a site manager. My hands, now spotted with age and scarred from decades of honest work, built the foundation of everything I have. My name is Frank Harmon, and this is the story of how I discovered that the people I trusted most were planning to take everything from me. Margaret and I bought our house in the Selwood neighborhood back in 1986. It wasn't much then, a modest three-bedroom craftsman that needed work, but it was ours. We paid $67,000, scraping together every penny for the down payment. I still remember how Margaret cried when we got the keys, overwhelmed by the reality of owning our own home. "We did it, Frank," she had whispered, her fingers intertwined with mine as we stood on the porch that first evening. Our own little piece of America. Over the years, as Portland grew around us, so did the value of our property. What was once a working-class neighborhood became trendy, then desirable, then exclusive. The modest home we'd purchased for under $70,000 was now worth over $1.2 million, a fact that still seemed impossible to me. But Margaret never got to see that transformation complete. Cancer took her 5 years ago, leaving me alone in the house that still echoed with her laughter. We had one daughter, Elaine. She was always bright, ambitious qualities I admired, even when they took her away from us. She went to college on the scholarships she earned, but I still worked overtime for years to help with her expenses. When she married Greg Phillips 12 years ago, I thought she'd found someone who shared her drive. He had an MBA from a good school and talked about entrepreneurship and investment opportunities with a confidence that impressed me, despite my natural skepticism of men in expensive suits who have never worked with their hands. After Margaret passed, Elaine suggested I sell the house and move into something smaller, maybe a retirement community. "It's too much house for you, Dad," she would say during her increasingly infrequent visits. "And you could use the money to enjoy your retirement." But I wasn't ready. This house held Margaret in every corner: the garden she'd tended, the kitchen where she'd hummed while cooking Sunday dinners, the bedroom where I still sometimes reached across in the night, momentarily forgetting she was gone. Besides, I was still independent, still healthy enough to maintain the place myself. "I'm fine right where I am," I'd tell Elaine. "When the time comes, the house will be yours anyway." I thought that settled it. I was wrong. The first sign something was amiss came on a Tuesday morning in early April. I was in my workshop in the garage, restoring an old dresser I'd found at an estate sale, when I heard voices in the driveway. Through the window, I saw Greg's Tesla pull up, but he wasn't alone. A couple I didn't recognize stepped out with him, a tall man in a suit similar to the ones Greg favored, and a woman with blonde hair pulled back in a severe bun. I wiped my hands on a rag and stepped outside. "Greg, didn't know you were coming by today." He startled slightly before composing himself. "Frank, just showing some friends the neighborhood. This is Michael Chen from Apex Development and his associate, Vanessa." The man stepped forward with a practiced smile. "Beautiful property you have, Mr. Harmon." "Thank you," I replied, noticing how his eyes were scanning the exterior of my home with an appraising look I recognized from years in construction. "Are you looking to buy in Selwood?" "Michael specializes in luxury property development," Greg said quickly. "We were just in the area for lunch and thought we'd stop by. Mind if we come in for a minute? I wanted to show them your view of the river from the back deck." Something felt off, but I couldn't place what. "Sure, come on in. Pardon the mess, wasn't expecting company." As I led them through the house, I noticed Michael making notes in his phone, while Vanessa asked pointed questions about the age of the roof, the electrical system, and whether the basement had ever flooded. Not the typical curiosity of casual visitors. On the deck, as Greg was pointing out landmarks visible from our elevated position, I overheard Michael murmur to Vanessa, "Easily subdivided into 3 lots. We could fit 2 townhomes on each." A cold feeling settled in my stomach. When they left 20 minutes later, I watched through the window as Greg and Michael shook hands in the driveway. The exchange looked celebratory, like men closing a deal. That night I called Elaine. "Your husband stopped by today," I said after our usual pleasantries. "Brought some real estate developer with him." A pause. "Oh." He didn't mention that to me. Guy was measuring my house with his eyes, talking about subdividing the property. Dad, her voice took on that patient tone she used when she thought I was being difficult. I'm sure you misunderstood. Greg knows a lot of people in different industries. They were probably just visiting. I know what I heard, Elaine. Look, we're just concerned about you being alone in that big house. It's a lot to maintain at your age, and the money would secure your future. My future is secure, I said firmly. I have my pension, my savings, and no mortgage. I don't need to sell my home to be comfortable. We just want what's best for you, she said, a hint of frustration creeping into her voice. After we hung up, I sat in my recliner, the one Margaret had always teased me about being too attached to, and stared at the family photos on the mantel. There was Elaine on her graduation day, her arm around my shoulder. There was our family vacation to the Oregon coast when she was 12. There was her wedding day, with Margaret and me flanking the newly married couple, all of us smiling. Had I misread the situation? Was I becoming the suspicious old man I'd always sworn I wouldn't turn into? The next morning, I decided to do something I'd never done before. I drove to the small cafe where I knew Greg often worked remotely. Sure enough, his Tesla was in the parking lot. I didn't go in instead. I parked where I could see him through the window, but he wouldn't notice me. He was sitting with Michael Chen again, papers spread between them on the table. They were engaged in intense conversation, Greg nodding enthusiastically while Michael pointed at something on what looked like a blueprint or site plan. I felt sick. My son-in-law was plotting to sell my home out from under me. Rather than confronting him, I drove to the public library. The quiet, book-lined space had always helped me think clearly. I needed information, not accusations. At one of the computers, I searched for Apex Development Portland and found their website featuring gleaming condominiums and luxury townhomes built on what had once been single-family lots. Their latest project was in a neighborhood similar to mine an elderly homeowner had sold, and within months, the charming old house had been demolished, replaced by 6 narrow townhomes starting at $800,000 each. Next, I looked up property records for my address, confirming what I already knew: the house was solely in my name. They couldn't sell it without my consent. But what were they planning? To pressure me? To wait until I was too frail to resist? Or something worse? I remembered how Greg had been asking about my will the previous Christmas. Just want to make sure everything's in order for Elaine's sake, he'd said casually over eggnog. I'd assured him it was simple. Everything would go to Elaine upon my death. The thought that had been forming in my mind solidified into a terrible suspicion. What if they weren't planning to wait for me to agree to sell? What if they were waiting for something else? On my way home, I stopped at an electronics store and purchased a set of small security cameras, the kind that connect to your phone and can be hidden easily. The young sales associate helped me understand how to set them up, probably assuming I was a worried grandfather rather than a man investigating his own family. I installed them that evening, one in the living room, one in the kitchen, one on the back deck, and one aimed at the driveway. If anyone came to my house when I wasn't there, I would know. For the next week, nothing happened. I began to think perhaps I had overreacted after all. Then, on Saturday morning, while I was at my weekly breakfast with my friends at Tom's Restaurant, a tradition of 15 years, my phone buzzed with an alert. Someone was at my house. I excused myself and stepped outside to check the camera feed. Greg's Tesla was in my driveway again, and this time, he wasn't just with Michael and Vanessa. There was another man I didn't recognize, wearing the uniform of a local home inspection company. They had a key, my spare key, which I'd given to Elaine for emergencies. I watched in disbelief as Greg unlocked my front door and ushered the group inside. I paid my bill hurriedly and drove home, my hands tight on the steering wheel. By the time I arrived, they were in the basement. I could hear their voices through the floor as I quietly entered the house. The foundation is solid, the inspector was saying. Original construction but well maintained, no signs of settling or water damage. What about these walls? Michael asked. Load-bearing, some are, some aren't. We'd need an engineer to determine exactly which could be removed in a remodel. Timeline? Greg's voice now. How quickly could we move once we have possession? Assuming permits go through smoothly, demolition could start within 30 days. Complete teardown and prep for new construction would take about 3 weeks. I'd heard enough. I walked heavily down the stairs, making no attempt to mask my approach. The conversation stopped abruptly. Frank, Greg recovered first, his face arranging itself into a smile that didn't reach his eyes. We were just planning how quickly you could tear down my home after I'm gone. My voice was steadier than I felt. Or were you planning to help me along to speed up the process? The inspector looked between us uncomfortably. I think I have what I need for now, he muttered, edging toward the stairs. Get out, I said quietly. All of you. Get out of my house. Michael began some explanation about misunderstandings and preliminary evaluations, but I cut him off. I want my key back, I said to Greg, holding out my hand. And I want you to leave. His face hardened, the pretense dropping away. You're being unreasonable, Frank. This house is wasted on one old man. Elaine is your only heir. We're just planning for the inevitable. The inevitable, I repeated. And when exactly were you expecting this inevitable event to occur? He didn't answer, which told me everything. After they left, I sat at my kitchen table, the same table where Margaret and I had shared thousands of meals, where we'd helped Elaine with her homework, where we'd celebrated birthdays and Christmases and ordinary Tuesdays. My hands were shaking. I called Elaine again. This time, she didn't answer. I left a message asking her to come see me alone. We needed to talk. Then I called my old friend Robert Wilson, who had retired from his law practice 2 years earlier. I need some advice, Bob, I said when he answered, and I need it to stay between us. He agreed to meet me the following day. That night I couldn't sleep. I paced the house, touching the walls Margaret and I had painted together, looking at the marks in the doorframe where we'd measured Elaine's height as she grew. They were planning to erase all of it, turning my life's work and memories into luxury townhomes for strangers. Over coffee in his home office the next morning, I told Robert everything, the visits, the inspections, the overheard conversations. You're sure about this? He asked, his bushy eyebrows drawing together in concern. I have it on video, I said, showing him the footage from my security cameras. He watched silently, his expression darkening. When it finished, he looked up at me. What do you want to do, Frank? I want to protect my home, I said simply, and I want them to face consequences for what they were planning. Legally, they haven't done anything yet, he cautioned. Having your house assessed isn't a crime, even if it's underhanded. But they used my key without permission. That's trespassing, isn't it? It's complicated if you gave the key to your daughter. A good lawyer could argue implied consent. I leaned forward. Bob, I'm not a vengeful man. I've worked hard all my life, played by the rules, but they were planning something. Greg asked about my will, about my health. They were waiting for me to die or worse, planning to help it along. Robert was quiet for a long moment. That's a serious accusation, Frank. Do you have any evidence beyond suspicion? I didn't, and I knew it. Not yet. But I need to protect myself and what's mine. Then let's start there, he said. First, change your locks today. Second, we're going to update your will with some modifications they won't be expecting. Third, you need to document everything. Keep those cameras running. If they're planning something illegal, we'll catch them. That afternoon, I had a locksmith change every lock in the house. I also had him install a security system with motion sensors and door alarms. The technician gave me a curious look when I insisted on panic buttons in my bedroom and the living room, but he installed them without comment. Elaine finally called me back that evening. Dad, what's going on? Greg said you threw him out of the house. I caught him bringing a home inspector through my house without my permission, Elaine. They were talking about demolition timelines. He was just trying to help, she said, but her voice lacked conviction. We're worried about you being alone in that big house. Don't lie to me, I said quietly. Not you. Tell me the truth. Were you part of this plan? The silence that followed told me everything I needed to know. We weren't going to do anything right away, she finally said, her voice small. It was just planning for the future. The neighborhood is changing, Dad. Developers are paying premium prices. We could have gotten at least $2 million for the lot. I repeated. It's my house, Elaine, my home. The one your mother and I sacrificed to buy, the one where we raised you. And you're going to die someday, she burst out. Then it will be mine, and I'll just have to deal with all of it then. Why not be practical now? The words hit me like physical blows. My daughter was waiting for me to die so she could cash in on my home. Is it Greg pushing this? I asked, grasping for some explanation that would let me keep loving my daughter. Is he in financial trouble? She laughed bitterly. It's not just Greg. It was my idea, Dad. We've got plans, investment opportunities that could set us up for life, but they require capital now, not years from now. So you decided my time was up, that I should be moved out of the way for your convenience? That's not fair, she protested. We were going to make sure you were taken care of. A nice retirement community, all expenses paid. Whether I wanted it or not, she didn't answer. Don't come here again, I said finally. Either of you, I'll be changing my will tomorrow. Dad, I hung up. For the first time since Margaret died, I felt truly alone. The next morning, Robert and I met with his former law partner, who was still practicing. Together, we drafted a new will with very specific provisions. If I died of natural causes, witnessed by a medical professional, Elaine would still inherit, but not immediately. The house would be placed in a trust for 5 years, during which time it could not be sold or developed. After that period, she would gain full ownership. However, if I died under suspicious circumstances, or if there was any attempt to declare me mentally incompetent without evaluation from 3 independent doctors of my choosing, the house would bypass Elaine entirely and go to a trust benefiting the local community college's scholarship fund for students in the construction trades. This should remove any incentive for foul play, Robert's partner explained, and protect you from being railroaded into a guardianship arrangement. I never thought I'd need protection from my own daughter, I said, the words hollow in my mouth. Family can be complicated, Robert said gently, especially when money is involved. We filed the new will that day. I also visited my doctor for a complete physical and cognitive assessment, documenting that I was of sound mind and in relatively good health for my age. The report went into a safe deposit box along with copies of the new will and a letter explaining my concerns, to be opened only in the event of my untimely death. For the next few weeks, everything was quiet. Too quiet. Elaine didn't call, and neither did Greg. The security cameras captured no unexpected visitors. I maintained my routine breakfast with friends on Saturdays, church on Sundays, volunteering at the community center on Wednesdays. I worked in Margaret's garden, preparing it for summer as I had every year since she passed. Then, on a rainy Thursday in May, my doorbell rang. It was Elaine, alone and soaking wet despite the umbrella clutched in her hand. "Can I come in?" she asked, her voice small and uncertain. I hesitated, then stepped aside. She entered, dripping on the entryway floor that I'd just refinished the previous month. "I left Greg," she said without preamble, setting her umbrella in the stand by the door, the ceramic one her mother had painted in a pottery class 20 years ago. "What?" "I left him. Filed for divorce yesterday." She looked up at me, her eyes red-rimmed. "You were right about him, about everything." I guided her to the kitchen, put the kettle on for tea, Margaret's ritual for any family crisis, big or small. "What happened?" I asked as I placed a steaming mug in front of her. "After you changed your will," she paused, registering my surprised expression. "Yes, we found out. Greg has a friend at the county records office. When he realized he wasn't getting his hands on this property, she trailed off, her hands tightening around the mug. "He what, Elaine?" He got angry, said I'd failed to handle you properly. She laughed bitterly. "Like you were some business problem to be managed." That's when I started paying attention to our finances, really paying attention. She reached into her purse and pulled out a folder, sliding it across the table to me. "He's been hiding things, debt, failed investments. The opportunities he talked about, they were desperate gambles to recoup losses. He needed your property to secure loans for his next scheme." I opened the folder. Bank statements, credit card bills, loan applications, all showing a pattern of increasing desperation. Greg had remortgaged their house without telling Elaine. He'd taken out personal loans at exorbitant interest rates. He'd even borrowed against her retirement accounts. "How bad is it?" I asked. "Bad," she whispered. "I might lose the house. I've already consulted a bankruptcy attorney." I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I just felt tired. "Why are you telling me this, Elaine?" "Because you deserve to know the truth," she said, meeting my eyes for the first time. "And because I'm so sorry, Dad. What we were planning, what I agreed to, it was unforgivable. I got caught up in Greg's promises, his vision of wealth and success. I forgot what really matters." I wanted to believe her. God help me, I wanted my daughter back. But trust, once broken, isn't easily repaired. "Where will you go?" I asked instead of offering forgiveness I wasn't ready to give. I'm staying with a friend from work for now, she said. I'll figure something out. We sat in silence, the rain pattering against the windows, the same windows I'd replaced myself 15 years ago when we couldn't afford to hire someone. I won't ask to move back in, Elaine said finally. I know I don't deserve it, but I hope someday you can forgive me. After she left, I called Robert. Elaine came by, I told him. Says she's left Greg, discovered he's in financial trouble. Do you believe her? I considered the question. I want to, but I need to be sure. Can you check into their finances, verify what she told me? Robert agreed. Over the next week, he used his connections to discreetly investigate. What he found confirmed Elaine's story and revealed even more. Greg wasn't just in debt. He was being investigated for wire fraud related to an investment scheme. His partnership with Apex Development had fallen apart when they discovered he'd misrepresented his financial situation. He's desperate, Frank, Robert warned me. Men like that are dangerous when cornered. I doubled down on security, added cameras, had motion sensor lights installed around the property, kept a baseball bat by my bed and pepper spray in my pocket when I went out. 2 days later, my precautions proved necessary. I woke at 2:17 a.m. to the security system's alert on my phone motion detected at the back door. On the camera feed, I saw Greg, alone this time, trying to force the new lock with what looked like a credit card. I called 911 immediately, reporting a break-in attempt. Then I activated the house alarm, which sent Greg scrambling back to his car. By the time police arrived, he was gone, but not before the cameras captured clear footage of his face and license plate. The responding officers took my statement and the video evidence. We'll find him, sir, one assured me. Breaking and entering is a serious offense. They located Greg the next day, arrested him, and found evidence in his car that elevated the situation from attempted breaking and entering to something much more sinister: latex gloves, duct tape, a syringe, and a vial that later tested positive for a lethal dose of insulin. When confronted with this evidence, facing serious charges, and with his financial crimes also coming to light, Greg broke down and confessed. He'd planned to stage my death as a diabetic emergency. I didn't have diabetes, but he figured that detail would be overlooked if an elderly man was found dead in his home. The investigation that followed revealed the full scope of his desperation. The debts, the failed schemes, the plans to quickly sell my property to developers before anyone could question his right to do so. He'd even forged documents indicating he had power of attorney for my affairs. Elaine was devastated but cooperative with authorities, providing evidence that helped build the case against her soon-to-be ex-husband. She hadn't known about his plan to harm me, but she had been complicit in the earlier schemes to pressure me into selling. Greg was sentenced to 15 years for attempted murder, fraud, and numerous other charges. The judge was particularly harsh given his targeting of an elderly family member, me. In the aftermath, Elaine and I began the slow, painful process of rebuilding our relationship. I couldn't bring myself to let her move back in trust has limits, but I helped her find an apartment and get back on her feet financially. I don't deserve your help, she said when I paid the security deposit on her new place. Probably not, I agreed, but your mother would have wanted me to help you, and despite everything, you're still my daughter. That was 2 years ago. Today, I still live in my house in Selwood. I've made some concessions to age, installed grab bars in the shower, a railing on the porch steps, replaced the steep attic stairs with a pull-down ladder. But I'm still here, still independent. Elaine visits every Sunday for dinner. We're not what we once were, but we're finding our way back to something like family. She's working as an account manager at an advertising firm now, slowly rebuilding her credit and her life. As for the house, I've made new arrangements. Upon my death, it will still go to Elaine, but with irrevocable restrictions preventing its sale or development for 20 years. After that, she can do what she wants with it. Maybe by then, she'll understand what this home really means. Last week, I was working in the garden when a sleek black car pulled up. A man in an expensive suit emerged, not unlike Greg in his manner, but older, more established. "Mr. Harmon," he called over the fence. "I represent Westridge Partners. We're interested in acquiring properties in this area for a new development. I'd like to discuss an offer: $3 million, all cash, quick closing." I straightened up slowly, my knees protesting after an hour of weeding. I looked at my house, the porch where Margaret and I had sat on summer evenings, the window of Elaine's childhood bedroom, the oak tree I'd planted when we first moved in that now towered over the roof. "This property isn't for sale," I said firmly. "Not now, not ever, not while I'm alive." "Perhaps you should think about it," he suggested. "At your age, wouldn't you prefer something easier to maintain? We could help you relocate to a nice retirement community." I laughed then, surprising both of us. "Son, the last man who tried to move me out of my home is currently in the Oregon State Penitentiary. I suggest you get back in your fancy car and look elsewhere." His expression changed from confidence to confusion to unease. Without another word, he retreated to his vehicle and drove away. Standing there in Margaret's garden, soil under my fingernails and the sun warm on my face, I felt something close to peace. They had tried to take everything from me, my home, my dignity, even my life. They had failed. This house, built on 43 years of honest labor, strengthened by love and memories, would remain mine until I was ready to leave it. And when that day came, it would be on my terms, not theirs. As I returned to my gardening, I thought about the lessons of the past few years. Trust, but verify. Family isn't always what you expect it to be. And sometimes, the most important preparation isn't the security system or the updated will. It's the courage to stand your ground when the world thinks you should step aside. My name is Frank Harmon. This is my home, and I'm not going anywhere. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left.